Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize for not being with you in person to share the joy of face-to-face interactions which we all miss after such a prolonged period of social distancing. I'll keep my presentation brief and to the point, and happy to take your questions at the end of interventions that will be made by my fellow panel speakers. The behavior of the so-called Belarusian authorities can unquestionably be classified as a crime against humanity, as it is defined in international law. This has a number of practical implications, one of which has to do with the possibility of invoking a question of criminal liability of individuals who commit the crimes in question. Currently accessible evidence is more than sufficient to identify concrete individuals and chain of command, starting from the police or security officers and going all the way up to Lukashenko. One of the key questions that needs to be answered by international stakeholders, including the governments of the OSCE participating states, is what would be the most appropriate format of adjudicating the crimes in question. One thing is when an NGO representative like myself or a government official makes allegations of crime against humanity. Yet another thing is to have a competent, independent and impartial tribunal examine the evidence and arrive to a conclusion in the form of a verdict. There are at least two ways this can be achieved. One of them is through criminal proceedings that can be initiated by the states that have so-called universal jurisdiction laws. These laws permit extraterritorial application of the criminal law and judicial system as such. And another way is through the International Criminal Court, or the ICC. Crimes committed by the Lukashenko regime have already been brought to the attention of prosecuting authorities in a number of European countries, including Lithuania, Germany, Poland, and France, to name just a few. And it is of utmost importance that investigative authorities in these countries examine evidence that has been presented to them in a timely manner, and that the cases are dealt by the competent courts without further delay. Yet another way to handle the situation in a criminal law dimension is to have it examined by the International Criminal Court, as I mentioned. Despite Belarus not being part of the Rome Statutes, the existing and undisputed case law of the ICC permits this court to investigate the situation and to try the perpetrators in a situation when crime has taken place outside the territorial jurisdictional scope of the court or by the nationals of a non-state party. In this case, situation like Belarus. A group of NGOs led by organization I work for, International Partnership for Human Rights, and supported by the UK-based law firm Global Diligence, have made a well-argumented submission to the Office of the Prosecutor of the ICC, inviting the prosecutor to open preliminary examination into Belarus situation. And we have also encouraged a number of European governments to back our submission by the so-called state party referral, which is one of the ways for triggering ICC system. Acknowledging that criminal investigations, either by the European states or by the ICC, are, at least at this point, unlikely to lead to the surrender of Lukashenko and his entourage to the court, these criminal proceedings can still play an important role and support the struggle of Belarusian people to live in a free and democratic society. First, an issuance of an arrest warrant against a person that is acting as a legitimate head of state will entirely change the way that person is perceived by public, both inside and outside the country. Second, this will have significant consequences on the ability of the person who is under criminal investigation to engage in political process, seek re-election, or support of all kinds from international community. Last but not least, criminal proceedings will provide a long-awaited possibility for the victims of the regime to seek justice through judicial proceedings. I will stop here, and I'm happy to take your questions at the end of the interventions made by my fellow panelists. Thank you very much for your attention.